The Trojan horse was just, oh, it's for traffic tickets. It's to stop the bad guys. Well, who's going to stop and protect us from the government? Who's going to protect us from a surveillance state where the government has access to all of our information and data, therefore can manipulate? Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Tea with Tayler. As always, I appreciate you joining me. I hope you find value, entertainment, and some education from my content. And if you do, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing, because as I mention frequently, it's important that we support entrepreneurs, creators, products, services that reflect our values. And in this episode, I want to discuss the topic of a surveillance state. Specifically, it was triggered by my red light ticket that I received in Illinois. I no longer live in the communist state of Illinois, but I recently moved, and after I moved to my in-between address currently in Michigan, I received a ticket in the mail from the state of Illinois for a red light ticket that they caught me on camera turning right on red when I wasn't supposed to, took a picture of my vehicle, and mailed me a ticket. And I want to discuss the implications of this policy and what it is kind of like the Trojan horse for, and why we should be concerned about a surveillance state and the expansion of surveillance coming from governments and even companies. So not only do I find this to be unconstitutional and a violation of the Fourth Amendment, because as we know, the Fourth Amendment protects us from unlawful search and seizure. So I believe that the government, when I say them, I mean the government, the state of Illinois, recording their citizens and recording vehicles is a violation of our privacy. Now, if a cop was there and saw me turn, they have the right to pull me over. But I don't believe the state or the federal government have the right to surveil their citizens, and that's something that should be alarming to us. And this is how they start policies. They'll start it by, a quasi, not that severe of a infringement on your right. Like it's just a traffic light. They're just recording you driving. But that's how it always starts. It's just a little bit of your freedom giving up to the government for the safety of the community. Apparently me turning right on red was something worth recording their citizens for. And they do this for other different topics, but this is just a prime example. Now they have cameras around the state of Illinois, specifically this was in Cook County, to record its citizens. Where else are they going to find within that legislation or expand on that legislation to further surveil their citizens, further violate their Fourth Amendment right? We have other examples of this through the Patriot Act, and I'm sure there's many more policies and situations that have violated our constitutional right, the Fourth Amendment right, to protect us from the government, from surveilling us, from search, and from seizure. So I believe this is a violation of the Constitution, and furthermore, it provides the avenue for the government to expand on this policy and further surveil its citizens in other aspects rather than just traffic light. And I want to explain to you why I think this is such a concerning thing and where it can go. So, like I said, it just starts with a traffic light, but it can lead to them putting them all around the city, in all public areas, and then so you are being recorded by the government. So they will have video footage or footage of you without you knowing. That is a violation of your privacy. And then, who knows, maybe they could weaponize it against you in the future if we know how if you, like I, know the FBI does what the FBI wants, and they a lot of times justify the means to get their desired end. So we need to be conscious of when the government is not only infringing on our rights and our right to privacy, but how they could weaponize that. And if we want an example of how extreme it could get, we can just look at China. China has a surveillance society. They have technology across the whole country where they are able to record their citizens and they have facial recognition so they can know who is who, when, what are they doing. They have their data, they have their location, and they can really weaponize that technology and that data against their citizens at any point in time. And then also, when you have the ability to record and track and obtain the data and location of your citizen and be able to know who is who and where they are through facial recognition, then, like the Chinese government has already instituted, you have another step towards a social credit score. And if we, as we should, review and learn from the Chinese social credit score that they currently have, they say it's voluntary. It's really not, if you know the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party of China. So they have a social credit score where the government literally has the ability to penalize you for your social behavior, for your purchasing habits. If you play too many video games, if you didn't make a payment on one of your bills, they can just ding your social credit score, and they can then punish you in ways of prohibiting you from buying flights, from purchasing a vehicle, from being able to leave the country. And so, with that, the government has the ability through the social credit score, through these technologies, to track the data and locations through a surveillance state, to manipulate people to act in the way the government wants you to act, through your behavior, through your purchasing habits, through your finances, through your information, what you read, what you have access to through the internet. Because in China, they don't even have access to the internet like we do here in America or in other countries, other free countries, where they don't have Twitter or Instagram, and they don't have access to certain information because the government doesn't deem it, the government doesn't approve it, and therefore its citizens don't have the opportunity to have access to this information. And when the government can surveil you through traffic, can they surveil you through your phones next? Because the Biden administration has talked about having a relationship with phone companies where they would have access to citizens' data and their phone conversations and their text messages. And then is the government going to also have surveillance through your social media platforms? Will they'll create some sort of legislation where they'll have ability to go through your social media, to go through your phones, go through your TVs, your computers? Where does it stop? The Trojan horse was just, it's for traffic tickets. It's to stop the bad guys. Well, who's going to stop and protect us from the government? Who's going to protect us from a surveillance state where the government has access to all of our information and data, therefore can manipulate our behaviors based on how they either punish us or reward us depending on how we act, and if we act within the government's favor and within the guidelines of how the government wants us to act. Let's learn from what is currently going on in China with their surveillance state and their credit score, where they've literally banned over tens of millions of flights of their own citizens based off a negative credit score. And then they can control what opportunities you have. Not only control you, but your family through the little by little of legislation that is passed by the government they're really good at framing it and categorizing it like it's going to stop the bad guys. Yet you can never just totally stop the bad guys. And who stops the bad guys in government? No one. They're never held accountable. So when you grow the scope of government, not only do you provide them more power and authority and the ability for them to get away with illegal activity, because surveilling its citizens and invading their privacy is illegal based on the U.S. Constitutional in the 4th Amendment. And not only, they tend not to get the bad guys. They can weaponize it towards, just your average person who turned right on a red light when I wasn't supposed to. They can weaponize it against political adversaries. Maybe they don't like the way you think. You have wrong think. Maybe they don't like the way you speak. Maybe they don't like the values and the beliefs that you hold. Well, they can weaponize this against you. And that's something that we need to be aware of, and that's something that we need to put a stop to. I would love to see this matter of this legislation go in through the courts and up to the Supreme Court. And even though I don't fully have faith in the Supreme Court, but definitely make its way through the court system so they can have a constitutional battle on if this is constitutional or not. In my opinion, it is not. Now, I don't have the means to take this to court, but hopefully it will. And it's something that really worries me. So it just makes me also think, where else is our government surveilling us? Where is the either states or federal government violating our Fourth Amendment right and invading our privacy, collecting our data, and surveilling its citizens? It's something we need to think about. Like I said, this was just a traffic light. We have the Patriot Act, we have the FBI, and we have the parts of our government wanting to form relationships with phone companies, social media platforms, to have access to your data, to your private information, and to your privacy, to either to whatever means, through whatever means, to justify their desired end, which is more surveillance over its citizens, to have more power and authority to the government. And that's something that we need to be very skeptical, very conscious of, and push back upon, because our freedom and our privacy and our data is ours. It is something we need to cherish, protect, and we must not give little bits of our liberty up until we turn around and we don't have much of it left. Because if there's one thing that we learn, both currently and historically, once you give up your freedoms, your liberties, your privacies, the government never, or maybe rarely, if ever, give you those freedoms, those rights, and that authority back to its people. So I wanted to discuss this in this video, and just something I thought about. It worries me, and I think it's something we need to really push back against. We need to make sure that there is a hard line in the sand against the government invading our privacy and our data. And so look into it yourself. Again, I really, really, really recommend studying or reading about the China social credit score and their surveillance society, because it is being pushed in free societies, and it is being propped up as a desired end for many people in power and in government, especially here in the United States and many other governments across the world. So I definitely recommend you reading about it yourself, educating yourself on it, and being aware of what's going on. Live at a higher frequency, be a conscious human being, value privacy, data, because for one, you can't stop all the bad guys, you can't stop all the crime, and if anything, big government tends to make crime even worse. And then a lot of the time it's just, they're not even penalized, because the government can do whatever they want to you once they have the power and the authority over all of our information and our data. And we don't have laws or even the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment, to protect us against these violations and these infringements on our rights and our liberties. So I hope you found this information and this perspective a little bit interesting. Hopefully it gave you something to think about. If you haven't thought about it already, look it up and, educate yourself, be aware, be conscious, and again, support people, products, individuals, content creators that support your values, because together we can make the cultural change that we want to see. We can protect our freedoms and liberties, and ultimately the freedom-loving individuals that many of us are, I think, will win, and I would love to see that, and it's up to us. So I hope you found this informative, maybe interesting, and please consider sharing, subscribing, look at my other videos, and just thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you soon. God bless. Take care. See you soon.